Welcome to the Kennebec Valley Chamber of Commerce Business Insider Breakfast. My name is Ross Cunningham. I'm the President and CEO of the Kennebec Valley Chamber. A special thank you to our Business Insider sponsors, Kennebec Savings Bank and Central Maine Power. Since Governor LePage took office in 2011, a steady decline in Maine's unemployment rate indicates that thousands of Mainers are working again. Governor LePage plans to continue to increase job opportunities with public policy that strengthens economic development, reduces taxes, and reforms welfare. This morning, he'll present his plans concerning taxes, welfare reform, and energy, as well as inform us about the 5 ballot referendum questions presented to voters this November. Please join me in welcoming our Governor, Paul LePage.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I want to give you a little bit of a state of the state and what we need to do to move forward. I think many of you here already know. Unfortunately, we can't get there with the current configuration of legislature, and I don't mean Democrat or Republican. That's not what I'm talking about. Nobody has a monopoly on stupidity. It's that simple. And it might be not politically correct to say that, but let me tell you, when you take the 10 top states in America and the 10 lowest, poorest states in America, and you look for the common denominators, and they stare you in the face, and you don't do anything about it, there is something wrong. Give you an example, and we don't have to go very far. Texas is #1 state in America, but New Hampshire is #7. New Hampshire is #7. New Hampshire does not have an income tax or a sales tax. Their property taxes are the 7th highest in America. They live off the property tax. But let me give you a little secret. The state of Maine has an income tax, which is one of the highest, and it will be the 2nd highest if this referendum passes. It has a sales tax, which is actually below the national average. We're very light on the sales tax. But guess where the property tax is? New Hampshire's #7, we're #9. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. And we spend beyond our means. And that's why I say November, it's not about Democrat, Republican. It's about people who care for the people of the state of Maine and who are willing to come to Augusta and work for the people of the state of Maine, not the special interest. For a case in point, education. Education, we are #12th in the country, I believe, in spending. We are 38th in performance. Florida is #7 in performance, #40 in spending. Utah is #2 in performance, #50 in spending. Maine has 2 problems. It has 127 superintendents for 177,000 kids. Florida has 3 million kids with 64 superintendents. I have sent a letter every single year that I've been your governor to the union, and I say, let's get together. You put up $5 million of dues money. I put up $5 million of education money, put it in a pool, and we'll have any teacher who wants to further their development, their career, this fund will pay for it. They put the time, we'll spend the money. We'll make sure that the money's spent. Whether it's travel, books, lodging, whatever it has to be, we'll make sure they get what they need to further their education. Because it's one thing to say you have the lowest paid teachers in America. It's another thing to say that you have the lowest qualifications in America. I mean, we don't have an abundance of masters and PhDs in our K through 12. So we can, if they develop, we pay them more money. I'm all in for paying them more money. And I've always said there are 2 losers and 2 winners in education. The winners are the superintendents and the union, and the losers are the teachers and the students. There's no excuse to be 38th in performance when the average class size is 11.1. 11 kids where the national average is 18. So there's $300 million worth of things we could be doing better, like we've done in DHHS. We're getting national acclaims now for the poverty, from Welfare to Work program, reducing poverty. Currently, people that were on welfare in 2010 that are now off welfare, are earning 118% more today than they did in 2010 through entitlements. So we are making progress. So, number one, we're way overtaxing Mainers, way overtaxing. The $900 million of income tax, personally believe it should go into your pockets. And that between May 31st and Labor Day, the state of Maine enjoys about 40 million visitors. I think we ought to take the sales tax and bring it up to the national average. Because Florida does it on sales tax and property tax. I have a home in Florida. My property taxes in Florida are half of what they are in Maine for a house I paid, and I paid exactly the same. Well, I paid $15,000 less in Florida than I did in Maine. My taxes in Maine, I had them on me earlier. They had to resuscitate me. I had to bring the paddles out earlier this morning when I got the bill. It's twice as much as they are in Florida. And there's no income tax in Florida. And they have a great education system. Do you know that in the city of Miami, Spanish-speaking kids, the number one language is Spanish, score 1 point behind Maine kids in the NEEP? How embarrassing. Now, I had an excuse when I was a kid. I was French. There's no excuse if you're not French. So we need to do a lot of work there. Energy. Last week, I thought there might be some hope, but then I realized they were both turned out. Speaker of the House and the majority leader in the House were in Quebec City to an energy conference on hydropower, big hydro. So at first when I saw them there, I said, holy mackerel, maybe they're going to get it. Then I realized they both turned out. I don't know if they're charging the state for their trip, but they ought not to be. Big hydro. If you're in Montreal, which is a metropolitan city of the world, you have an 1,100 square foot flat or house or whatever, your electricity bill would be around $30 a month, $30 to $35 a month. If you're in Maine, that'll be $80 to $85 a month. Now this is the kicker. If you heat your home with electricity in Montreal, your electricity bill in the winter will be $100, along with the heat and lights. Will be about $100 for December, January, and February. What's wrong with us? Now, we have reduced the use of oil from 80% down to 60%. But with a little bit of help in Augusta, with people that would get rid of this 100 megawatt limitation, which is an artificial, silly way of controlling energy. And this is what they'll say. We want to keep the money here in Maine. We want to keep all of the money here in Maine. Well, folks, let me give you a little secret. CMP is owned by Iberdrola, which is a Spanish company. Emera is owned by a Canadian company. And First Wind's not owned by a Maine company anymore. He made his money, and now we're paying the long dollar. So we need to get smart. Those are the two major issues. Red tape is another one, but we are gradually making headway there. I say gradually. We're paying attention to it. Let me tell you what I mean about red tape, how silly it is in Maine. Do you know that if you're a grandparent like I am, and let's say after I'm finished being governor in 2 years, I decide I want to provide daycare for my grandchildren, that I have to get fingerprinted? How many of you knew that? You have to get fingerprinted to take care of your grandchildren. Now people say, "Yo, that's good. We got to make sure." Let me tell you something. Yes, there's some bad grandparents, but I guarantee you, in Maine, there's more bad parents than there are bad grandparents because I deal with them every day. So maybe we ought to fingerprint the parents. Now, how silly is that? I'll tell you another one that's ridiculous, red tape. If you're a foreign national and you move to Maine, if you're a foreign national, we don't have access to your records. So if you're a sex offender in a foreign country and you come to Maine, we have a law that says you will voluntarily put yourself on the sex offender list. Really? It's been there for 2 years. Nobody's registered yet. You can't make it up. So when I say this isn't about Democrat or Republican, this is about common sense people in Augusta wanting to work for Maine people. My budget, biennial budget, is going to be very, very strong at lowering the income tax and increasing the sales tax. With 40 million people in 3 months, you could gain a lot of headway without going above the national average. Being well within a comfort zone, lower than most states like Florida and other states that are fairly high. I don't believe in multiple rates. I believe in one rate, that's it. It is a nightmare trying to administer 3 rates right now. If you buy a whole pie, it's one rate. If you buy a slice of pie, it's another rate. If you got sugar in it, it's another rate. It's just insane. You got to be a chef to be able to do the tax rolls. So we really need to simplify and move forward. We have the ability, just by looking at New Hampshire, and we can become as prosperous. They make over $12,000 per capita more than we do. I have friends who live in Portsmouth, Ossipee, Dover, Rochester, all on the border. They're all Mainers. We used to have an equal number of millionaires in Maine as they do in New Hampshire. Now we are down to about 500 to 600 millionaires, and they're up from 2,500 to 5,000. Folks, all we need to do is to talk to our families, our friends, our relatives, and our employees, and tell them we want to make life better for you. Now, the 3 issues you're going to see a lot of is going to be energy, regulations, and taxation. That's where we are. That's where I'm going with 1819. As far as the referendums go, there are 5 referendums and 1 bond. The bond is for roads. That will give you, for every dollar you spend on your roads, you get, like $6 or $7 from the federal government. That's a pretty good investment. In the last 4 years, we've been working on a 3-year rolling budget for roads. We have taken it completely out of the hands of the legislature, or at least we try to. They always throw some stuff in, but as far as the roads go, they have agreed to allow us to have the professionals in the Department of Transportation, engineers, decide where we're going to do the road work, and it's working. We have done more road work in the last 6 years than we did in the previous 20. We are working on a $2.3 billion road budget, 3-year road budget, and we're rolling it over. We finished this year, we go into next year, we added about an equal amount so that we can catch up to the deferred maintenance on our highways and our bridges. This year, Dave Bernhardt just told me about a month ago, he says, "Governor, we had a mild winter. I saved about $10 million. It's going to allow us to do another 64 miles of road, 63 and a half miles of paving this year." You know what the problem is? We can't find contractors. They're all working. So the state of Maine is doing well. In fact, last week I was named one of the top governors for economic policy in the country. And there were five top governors. One was a Democrat, 4 Republicans, and the 5 worst were all Democrats. So we have the right policies. We just don't have the right cooperation in Augusta. And it's not cooperation as much as ideology. We still have a whole lot of people that believe that entitlements are the right way to go. I believe that the way to solve poverty is with education, and education means you got to roll up your sleeve and help and teach. We all have to teach. And we do it every day. I receive letters now that in 2011, one lady wrote me a letter in 2011. It wasn't very flattering. And she wrote me another letter this year. She says, I got my RN since you forced me to go to work. I am now no entitlements, no money from the state in anything. I have my own insurance through my employer. I'm making good money. I have 2 daughters. I'm a happy camper. That's what it's all about. That's how you get rid of poverty. You educate. You just don't throw money at it and go to a cocktail party, which I see way too many people in Augusta do that. What we need is people that will roll up their sleeves and work. And I will tell you, there are 3 types of legislators. Those that are so happy to have a blue plate or a red plate that you never hear a thing about them until the next election. They're called backbenchers. That's what we call them. Then you have those self-enrichment. Believe me, about 1/3 of them are over there for self-enrichment. I'll give you an example. Remember the $15 million housing bond that everybody's screaming they want me to sell? Well, let me tell you, in housing bonds in the last 2 years, I think it's $180 million, a $60 million batch, and a $120 million batch the last 2. It's not the lack of money. The $15 million bond to the general obligation payment is through everybody in the state's going to pay for it. The day that passed, it passed on a Tuesday in November. By Friday, I had 3 legislators come down and wanted the money. 3 legislators had projects for that money. 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat. You know why? There's no hooks on it. You write them a check. It's not tied to rent. It's not tied to anything. It's just general obligation bonds for project. One guy came in. He had a $5.2 million project. He wanted $4.7 million bond money. You can't make it up. Now, I will tell you this. I've never been for sale. I'm not even for rent. And that's why I have a lot of enemies out there. It's not that I don't negotiate. It's that I don't sell myself. They don't have enough money to buy me off. And that's the problem I have with the legislature. Now, we did a wage study last year, for instance, on the state police. We found out that New Hampshire and Vermont were stealing all our state police, particularly from the lower counties. Oxford, Cumberland, and York. We were losing state police. We did a wage study. We found out they were like 18 to 30% below other states. So we gave them an increase. But after we did that, a certain senator decided, oh, it's election year, so we got to give a raise at Riverview. No wage study, no anything. They're not even, he didn't do the right analysis. And now what we have is I have 11,000 employees wanting a raise because we didn't do a wage study. Everybody wants an increase now. There's a way to do things and there's a way not to do things. So, the bond issue, yes. I will make your lives very easy on the other one. I'll save you a lot of reading. There's 5 referendums. No, 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 and no. Very simple. Day's over, all right? You get that? Minimum wage. Horrible, horrible, horrible. I'll tell you why. 14,500 people in the state of Maine make minimum wage. 8,500 work in restaurants. They're going to lose the tip credit. So now, those 8,500 people, my wife included, she works at a restaurant in the summer. She's averaging about $30 an hour. By the way, that's more than the governor makes. She loses that, she goes to $12 an hour. Then it's indexed. Every year it's going to go up. Add insult to injury, the other 6,000 people we're talking about are people with, a lot of them have disabilities. They can't work a full day. They can't work at 100%, or the average American works at about 84% efficiency. They can't work to that level. So they're paid less, but I'm going to tell you, if you've ever worked in a clubhouse model, we have one in Waterville, one here in Augusta. I've been involved with them for 20 years. In fact, I'm going to Washington to speak on their behalf here shortly, in the next couple of weeks. The issue is these folks are so proud to be able to go out and get a job. It's not about the hourly rate, it's the fact that somebody will hire them. But if you put the wage so high that it puts the small business in a bad position, I'm not worried about the Hannafords or Bath Iron. I'm talking about the retail shops up and down Main Street, the restaurants. You know, I started out dishwasher at 11 years old. Do you know that's illegal today? That's child labor. It's illegal in Maine to have a dishwasher under 16. By that time, it's too late. At 16, they don't know how to work, and at 18, you put a gun on their backs and you send them to Iraq or Afghanistan. How sensible is that? So, minimum wage, we talk about the 14,500, but this is where the problem is. Forget the indexing, forget the credit, the tip credit. The biggest problem, 325,000 people in Maine live off Social Security. That's the problem. They don't get an increase. 325,000 seniors are going to be hit hard on this. And when the AARP came in and told me they were inclined to support the minimum wage, I told them that. And now their official stance is, we're not taking a position. I'm serious. It's going to hurt the elderly the most. And the elderly are living on very light revenues, very tight revenues. Real big problem. The 3% one, the next one about the MEA wanting 3% more on the 7.15% will make us the second highest income tax in America. We'll be behind California. The highest marginal rate in California starts at $1 million. We're going to start at not an individual income of $200,000, but a family income of $200,000. We're going to be the second highest. Already, I'm having calls saying we can't recruit doctors. We're having problems with dentists and psychiatrists. We're having problems with high specialists. We're having problems recruiting world-class researchers. Why? Because they're saying if that passes, I'm going to be paying a lot more. I'm going to be penalized for moving to Maine. That's a real bad one. We don't need it. Instead of worrying about a minimum wage and that tax, why don't we, one, lower the tax, have reasonable, balanced regulations. Give you an example. NRCM is against mining in northern Maine. Most of the members of NRCM are down here in the south. Kennebec, Androscoggin, York, Cumberland. They're hell-bent on not having mining up north. The jobs would pay between $60,000 and $90,000. Why can't we say we'll find a balance? If you just worry about the environment and nothing else, you have no human activity and enormous poverty. If you worry only about high-paying jobs without the environment, you have an environmental catastrophe. Why not work together and find a balance? And you can do both. This climate change, look, if there's a climate change, let's work to mitigate it. Let's just not say stop all activity. So I think that we need to be careful about this 3% one. The guns, if that passes, I will tell you right now, it's going to the Supreme Court. I will not enforce it. I will not enforce it, and I'll tell you why. I've taken an oath to the Constitution of Maine and the Constitution of the United States. Both of them. And Maine is even the strictest of all. The Maine Constitution says that the citizens of the state of Maine have the right to own and bear arms, and it shall never be questioned. This bill is illegal. Now, if you want to go and change the Constitution, let's do that, and then pass it. But you can't go the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse, whichever way you want to put it. You can't do it. So that's a problem. Marijuana is another constitutional issue. I took a note to Maine, a note to the Constitution of the United States. Maine says it's legal. Constitution of the United States says it's illegal. I want to send it up, let them decide, make it national program. It's either up or down. And ranked choice voting, there again. Ranked choice voting, our Constitution says one person, one vote. Actually, it says one man, one vote, but I'm being politically correct this morning. You cannot, in our Constitution, the way it is currently written, have 5 votes and ranking them. It's not the way it speaks. It speaks to one person, one vote. So there again, if that passes, it's going to have to be sent up through the courts. So they're really not good legislation. First of all, they're not well written. And they're written by special interests, not by professionals. And it's going to be very, very difficult to interpret. And the only way it can be interpreted is like the courts do now, is they add words to it, or they say that this is the way you're going to do it. And be careful what you wish for. Now, every time Obama says more gun controls, I go and buy a gun. I haven't bought any bullets yet, but I buy the guns. Someday I'll buy bullets. Because someday I may have to. Because in our Declaration of Independence it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness. I maintain the government is now taking away our pursuit for happiness. And they're infringing on our liberties every day. And someday you might have to defend yourself. Because if you look at the gun control laws of America, New York City and Chicago have the toughest gun laws in America. The toughest in America. And they're dying by the droves. Maine, we have very lax gun laws. We are one of the safest states in America. As a matter of fact, we average about 24 homicides a year, of which half have been domestic violence related, what they call passion homicides. And the overwhelming passion homicides, not with a gun, it's with hands. So what do? Go out and start chopping hands off? No, you try to fix the problem. The problem is not the hands. The problem is not the trigger. The problem is here. And we have to deal. If you're going to deal with gun control, it has to be done with mental illness, terrorism, and guns. If you do all three, then I am at the table. If you only deal with with guns, I think we have a problem. Now, with that, that's what I think we should be doing. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. If I don't have the right answer, tough. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the welfare to work program. Is there anything in place where small businesses like my own can either get some help from the state to help train people?
Yes. Yes. There is unfortunately, we tried to make it so that it was broader, but there are 4 WIBs. They call WIBs, Workforce Investment Boards, in the state of Maine. I think we're down to, well, we still have 4. We have a state one and 4 locals, 4 community ones or county ones, or regional, I guess. And ones have gone away. The intent was to just have one volunteer board. It's about $10 million a year that comes in for training. And when I became governor, we did an analysis, and $7.2 million of the $10 million was going to salaries, not training. So we tried to get rid of it. We've managed to get about $5 to $5.5 million now going towards training. We've managed to improve it, but it's not where it should be. But yes, we can. If you call the office, either the Department of Labor or my office, I'll get somebody in touch with you. Okay, my office, if anybody, Peter back there's got cards. He can give you a card. The number is 287-3539, but Peter will give you a card if you'd like to call the office, and we'll get somebody in there to help you. And you can get help through the community college, through our office. So there are different ways to get help for people that you want to hire. Right now, it's getting tight to find people. It's not an employer's market, it's an employee's market. We are I think the last numbers I saw was 3.7%, which is well below the national average unemployment. We are putting everybody we can to work. I'm thinking of going to Puerto Rico and getting 100,000 people, bringing them up, only because they're all American. I don't have to worry about immigration, and they'd be here because it's much easier. And Puerto Rico's having a real devastating recession, and it would be nice to be able to provide them jobs. I don't know if we could keep them here in the winter, but we try. Anyone else? Yes?
Do you have any advice of who's a president?
No, ma'am. I told Donald Trump that if he wins, I do not want to be in his cabinet. I want to be the ambassador to Canada in the summer and Jamaica in the winter. Anyone else? You should grow up to be president. That's the plan? You'd make a better president than Hillary Clinton. Anyone else?
Governor,
Yes.
how do you see not the outcome of the election necessarily, but at the presidential level, but at the congressional level at this point?
I think at this point, I think it's going to be pretty much what it is right now. I think we're going to keep the second district. We're going to probably not do much in the first district. It's very, very difficult in the first district. There's no senators up now, so I think congressional elections are pretty much, from what I can see right now and what we're seeing on the talk on the streets. In the second district, Donald Trump has a sizable lead. In the first district, it's not as sizable. In fact, it's probably slightly behind. Nationally, I'd be very honest with you. I am supporting Donald Trump, and it's a situation of lesser two evils. He's made $11 billion. He's not been, you know, he's a tough businessman. He's had his up and down like any other business person, but he's a businessman. I had real issues with the email controversy, but that was light compared to Benghazi. To me, Benghazi, it's one thing to make a mistake and allow it to happen. It was repugnant to me that she wasn't willing to go get him and bring him home. The Pentagon had to overrule him, and they went in and got the people out. And to me, we do not, as Americans, leave our soldiers behind. And so she's out. So from that point of view, my first choice was not Donald Trump, it was Chris Christie. My second choice was Jeb Bush. Neither made it. It was clear to me after that, looking at what was happening in the country, that the American people are very angry. That's why Donald Trump is so popular, and that's why Bernie Sanders is so popular. The American people are angry at Congress. They're angry at the presidency. And frankly, I don't blame them, because I'm angry. I'm angry that we've had rivers in the state of Maine that have had dams on them for 200 years, and they're making us take them out. And not because they're the fish, because there's not going to be any fish, because once you take the dam out, it's going to be like here in Augusta. Better part of the year, there's hardly any water flowing. That's a problem. It's a problem when you're the cleanest emissions in the country, but you still have to make improvements that you can't afford. It's a problem when the big states are dumping soot over you and you can't do anything about it. So it's sad that our Congress hasn't been able to work. They can't get along, and then they can't get anything passed and won't even try. When somebody says, we can't pass it because the president's going to veto it, let him veto it. That's what we're there for. Our job is to look at the bills. If we don't like them, we veto them. Then you get a second shot at the apple. And if you can't get it done, then go home. That's why I admire people like Heather Siraki, Joel Stetkis, Larry Lockman, Bill Diamond, and a good personal friend, but he won't be here this year because he got beat in the primary, is a friend from Biddeford who's been here forever, Barry Hobbins. Barry Hobbins, a good legislator. So it's not about Democrat, Republican. It's really about progressives moving our country left of center or staying center right. That's what it's all about. I am center right. I believe in good public policy. I do not believe that somebody should come in and say, oh, I'll support this good bill if you let me put this on it, this on it, this on it, then it becomes trash. And that's a problem. It's a problem in Washington, and it's becoming a problem in our states. But make no mistake about it. There are three issues in this election. It's safety, keeping Americans safe. It's jobs, bringing the jobs that have left our country back to the United States. And $19.4 trillion that this young lady here is going to be straddled with, and her children will be straddled with. And it all came about in 8 years. Actually, 16 years. If you go back to when George W. Bush became president of the United States, the debt was $3.5 trillion. He left the presidency after 8 years, it was $7.5 trillion. Today, it's $19.4 trillion just in the last 8 years. You know, we had cash for clunkers. That was good. That got a lot of the Obama bumper stickers off the road. Now we got to have another one so we can get Bernie stickers off the road. Because it's really insane what we did to ourselves. When a company, and I keep saying this, there are two sayings you'll hear me say a lot. One is investment capital goes where it's welcomed, stays where it's appreciated. And number two is the low-cost producer will be the last person to turn the lights out. Now, any of you in business know what I'm saying. If you are the low-cost producer, you will be the last one to go out of business. And those are just basic little fundamental things that need to be done in Washington that everybody should agree with. I can't imagine that there's anybody in Washington that doesn't want to take all the jobs we lost, like Honeywell that went to China, shouldn't be back here. Honeywell pays super wages in China. It's not the wages, folks, it's the regulations, because the wages, you lose that over on the ocean. It's the taxation in China, 10%, and the regulations, they have none. Now, I don't agree in not having any. What I don't agree with is not having a balance between human activity and the environment. I think you have to have both. And we're not doing that. We got a letter yesterday from Fish and Wildlife. The alewife in Washington County is more valuable than the people in Washington County. They would prefer not having the ribbon cutting next week for the 2 tissue machines and force the mills to put that money that they spend on tissue machines on removing dams. Makes no sense. Anyone else? Yo, I got to go to work, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor. Thanks for being here.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.